Hey y'all, it's your girl Narice. And hold on, this last time I did this, I had a strand in my hair. I don't got time for the shenanigans popping up. All right, so I made a post on TikTok, or tried to make a post on TikTok, but the hackers be trying to stop my greatness. But anyway, basically, I gave a synopsis of my perspective about the space flight through Blue Origin with Gayle King and Katy Perry. Now, I'm already made posts the day of before it happened. And, I saw there was a lot of discourse and folks being very pessimistic about it and negative. And I can understand it because, most times when we saw Gail, she looked shook like she ain't want to be there. And everybody was like, Gail, you don't have to go if you don't want to. Now, and then also, like, there was a lot of comments that is just like, oh, y'all shouldn't do it. It's such a risk and this and that, which is understandable, especially with everything that's been going on with the airplanes and all. I can only imagine it was added fear around this particular space flight. So instead of adding to that conversation, I wanted to um, add prayers and, just positivity, you know, not like I was summoned to do that. But either way, um, we know that, like I said, there's a lot that's been going on with these airplanes. And, people would joke about, you know, this being some type of sacrifice or whatever. But, we're not going to act like that's not a real thing because that do be happening. And so, jokes or not, um, I just I just wanted to put the energy out there that, you know, for protection for them. And like I said in my post, even if it was for the optics, you know, I think it's better for them to survive the trip and then have y'all clowning them rather than something tragic happening. And then it's like all women trip that, you know, XYZ. But that's not the story, which I'm grateful for. I'm glad that they made it. So now they'll survive being clowned for, you know, being so dramatic about going to space for like 2 seconds and coming back down. Um, Either way, I'm still here for it because I think the overall intention is to normalize space exploration. And aside from the fact that I am interested in the cosmos and space travel and what goes on in the universe beyond what happens on Earth, I do think that's important too. And I do think that aside from us just seeing people who may have gotten degrees or went to school for physics or engineering or astronauts be the only ones to be qualified to go to space, I think that it's cool to see more civilians traveling the cosmos. Now, it just so happens that I don't know what the particular goal was for this particular trip. Maybe there was some type of, you know, Shilluminati things going on in the background. I don't know. But what I do know is that they made it. And, and some people are, underwhelmed about the experience because and I'm saying this for like the little people, us, everyday folks that are just watching it go down, um, are underwhelmed about the experience because, it was hyped up in the media like, oh my gosh, they're going to space and just like all the fear around it. And they literally was there for like 2 seconds and then back down. Um, I wasn't surprised by that though, because I already knew that that's what Blue Origin do. Like I said in my other post, was that the same thing with William Shatner when he did the flight like a few years ago. You know, he was there for like 2 seconds, came back down. Everything that everybody else is talking about with this particular space flight was what I've already said about the William Shatner one. I was just like, okay, well, I mean, like I thought it was cool because he's the Star Trek guy, and he's like 90 and some change, and still looks great, you know. And I mean, I thought it was cool for that, but at the same time, I was like, oh, he was just there for like 2 seconds. And when it comes to space exploration, you know, even though this particular person isn't the most popular at this moment in time, you know, Elon is ahead of everybody with SpaceX because not only is SpaceX traveling in space with, the whole professional STEM thing, there's astronauts, there's people going to, or, he's trying to go to Mars. You got let me chill. Let me chill. Um, I think it's all dope. I think it's all dope. And clearly people are on different levels when it comes to the whole like space travel thing. And I think he's ahead of everybody. Mainly because the main focus is for not just professional purpose, but scientific. So there is like it's not really commercial as much as Blue Origin is marketing themselves to be. I mean, there was that mission a few years ago. There's a series on Netflix, Countdown Inspiration 4, where he has four folks that orbit the Earth, and they were orbiting for like 3 days. And I think it, like I said in my post on TikTok that I was gonna post, but whatever. I think what would have been cool or would have been exciting for people is if it was a mix of both missions where you have some people who have a background in STEM and who have experience working at NASA, doing cybersecurity, doing, just work in space exploration or science, whatever, as well as people who are celebrities. Gayle King, I think she was a good choice because she's a journalist. So it's not like she's just like just a celebrity. Like her work is to report on what happens in the world. And then you have someone that like Katy Perry, who's an artist. And and some people are like, oh, this just seems like very elitist. And that can be true. However, I think it's important to see people other than scientists be a part of space. Um, so I think if there was a mix of both, where you have a mixed group of people who are like scientists as well as journalists, as well as some celebrities and whoever, or just like a regular person, um, and they orbited Earth for maybe like it doesn't even have to be like 3 days, maybe like one day or like a few hours or something, like whatever, up there for like a substantial amount of time. I think that would have been more um appealing to the public. But what do I know? I'm just a girl from Jersey. I'm just an artist. Um, but yeah, either way, and then also keep in mind something that I spoke to in my TikTok post is that, you know, I think we have to really think about, well, I don't think anybody who like doesn't really focus on um what goes on in outer space isn't really gonna care much about it. They're just kind of seeing it for surface value or seeing whatever story is being reported. But something that's important to keep in mind is the mission statement or the intention behind each company, because you have different people that are doing space travel. For a long time, growing up in my era, the only people we knew that was going to space was NASA. That was it. It was astronauts. If you're not an astronaut or a scientist or whatever the case may be, those was the only people going to space, right? And I believe her name Sam J, who's a comedian. She did a special, and she talked about that around the time when I think Elon started SpaceX. Or I mean, I think it was out for a while at that point, but it was really in the news that he was like a billionaire private company owner going to space. Even though Richard Branson, I think that's how you say his last name, he was already, I think he might have been, I don't know if he was the first one, but he definitely was somebody that pioneered that whole, oh, we can make this an industry thing, like a rich guy saying we're going to go to space. He's kind of like the first one to do it with Virgin Galactic. I had heard about it, but I didn't know much about it, and we haven't really been seeing much from it. But his particular company is, they were doing it like a tourist type of thing, like, pay for a ticket and you get to fly up to maybe not too far from where the orbit was, or the Blue Origin when they like popped up and went back down. Not far from there, but where it's, what is it called? G0. The When it's like no gravity and you're like floating in space and all those things, like fly just high enough to get to that space and then come back down. He was selling like tourist tickets for people to, be able to fly to space for like a tourist reason. Not like oh, we're going to go to the moon and like, get some samples and do some experiments. Like, nah, it was like um a tourist um intention. And I think, and with SpaceX, I mean, like, I don't know if that's the intent. I don't really see that from what's on the website, at least. Aside from that one mission, like I said before, with Inspiration 4. But even that, like, there was a charitable initiative with it too. So, I mean, I don't know how that worked. Like, I don't know how the logistics financially, how that made any sense. But I mean, whatever. But basically, the initiative behind it was to donate to St. Jude, which I think is cool. And I think they ended up donating in total like 300 million, which sounds crazy. I don't know. I'm not sure about the numbers. Now, that's what it said on the website. I think they said there was an initial donation of 100 million, and then the flight itself raised 200 million. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that math works. Like, how was the money raised in this? I feel like that's something you got to spend money to do that, unless people were like donating or there was marketing and stuff like that. But the only reason why I feel like I don't see a lot of people talking about that particular story, mainly because I'm like a nerd and I would follow that. But the marketing, there wasn't any celebrities in there. And I mean, it was a cool docuseries on Netflix. And like I said, they was up there for like maybe like 3 days, and they were actually orbiting Earth. I think that's the closest that I've seen SpaceX do anything that was close to regular civilians being a part of space travel. And it was cool. It was a cool documentary. You saw them do the training and, prep for the whole like no gravity thing. And it was dope. I thought it was dope. And yeah, this was like a few years ago. I think this was in like 2021. So yeah, before the whole political heat. but but yeah, and I think, but aside from that, usually what SpaceX does is, I think they just work with businesses. Um, I mean, I was trying to read up on it, but at the same time, like, I was still a little confused because I'm like, okay, well, who is the clientele? Like, who's the customer that's seeking this service? You know? And I mean, I guess it works when you got internet and space travel. So I guess if people were like purchasing the internet package and then, get their own satellite up there, and then you got to bring the satellite up, like, what is the purpose of needing a payload to go to space? I don't know. Maybe I'm not in that demographic. I'm not the clientele, so I don't know yet. However, but it seems like the only like commercial aspect to it is more on a professional standpoint, as if businesses are the ones paying for that service. It's not like regular people are just like paying to go on a space flight through SpaceX. And then not only that, but again, having a spacecraft that can go to the International Space Station and potentially go to the moon, because the whole thing with Elon is going to Mars, right? Um, I mean, that's dope. That's dope. But it's not like, like I said, the marketing. But what do I know? What do I know? Um, what do I know? I'm just trying to catch up to what y'all be knowing. But anyway, um, yeah, and then with Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' company, which is how the all women space flight happened. It was through that company. You know what's interesting? Because in that video that Katy Perry put out about the sign, the positive sign, um, and she was like, the name of the thing had a feather on it, and the name of the other thing was a tortoise. Which capsule were you talking about, Katie? I couldn't find the tortoise one, but either way, they made it there and they came back safely. Um, I don't know. I was just doing my research because I don't want to just be on here and I don't know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I do, and it is what it is. But either way, either way, I'm glad the ladies made it down safely. Um, yeah, and I mean, I will say it's funny seeing people's posts, joking about it and saying like, it take me longer to go grocery shopping. I feel that. I I feel that. But anyway, um but I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that whole thing because like I said in my TikTok post, in real time, my main thing was like, all the fear mongering that was going on around it, and, all the skepticism of whether it was going to be successful or not. Like under normal circumstances, I wouldn't worry about that just because it's not like this was the first time that Blue Origin's done a mission like that. Um, I think maybe with less people probably. But again, because of all the like people commenting and like all the hype around it, and again with everything that's been going on with like airplanes and everything, I can understand the concern. And yeah, I see why people were concerned in that way. And like I said before, I didn't want to use my content to add to it. Um, you know, because I mean, it would really suck if it didn't turn out well, and if this was the first all female crew to go to space in like 60 years. So I mean, I think it's better for people to crack the jokes or whatever versus it end in tragedy, which I rebuke. Um, so yeah, I mean, and there's that, and then like partially like I feel like like I didn't want to have to worry about like people playing, you know, because I do actually care about like space travel, I mean clearly like if this live stream isn't enough, and if my life were anything like the Truman Show, you might already know that. Um, but you know, partially like I didn't want to be too excited because I was just like, I don't know if they playing or not. Like, if this really gonna be something to be excited about. And again, my main focus was just praying for the safety, if anything. So there's that. But I don't know, like Me personally, I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, again, happy that everybody made it and was safe and all. But I guess the only thing that was underwhelming for me was, you know, like I said, I feel like it could have been, um, I don't I feel like the hype around it was interesting. Like, okay, like after they made it and touchdown and all, and they were like, all right, you are now an astronaut. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but but at the same time, like it is pushing space exploration forward. Even if people are like making jokes about it or whatever the case may be. But I don't think it's a complete waste though. Um it just was underwhelming a little bit. But at the same time, like I wasn't shocked by it at all. I wasn't like I said, I already knew like, okay, they was gonna go up there for like 2 seconds and come back down, you know. But but it would have been cool to see them like maybe do like a orbit or something like that. Then I feel like, all the fear mongering would have been valid. But then at the same time, I can understand maybe that would have been like too much, and there probably would have been a lot more training necessary. But I will say, like I said before, and I've seen people on TikTok was like, they ain't had no helmets, they ain't have on no spacesuit, they just had the all blue jumpsuits, and I'm like, I mean, the ladies were fabulous. Okay, everybody had the straight hair, lace fronts, curls, fabulous. Yes, indeed. Um, Everybody looked great. They looked great. They didn't look like what they've been through. But and I love that for them. I love that for them. Um, yeah, yeah, I do. Um, that was pretty much everything. Okay, now for my conspiracy theorists. Now, I did see somebody make a post like for all the okay, this is where I come to their defense a little bit about the whole like, oh, this was only 10 minutes thing and whatever. All right, so here's the thing. Like I said, there was a lot of fear mongering going on around it, right? Everybody was like, oh my gosh, don't do it. Why'd y'all take a risk like this? And especially with all the conversation around Gayle, like I said, Gayle was shaking in her boots every clip that we seen her in. And somebody was like, okay, what's really going on behind the scenes? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to go, like, what was the thing that made Gayle feel like she had to go? You know what I mean? Like, what was the main like? That's my whole thing. And then she did a quick interview and she talked about it and she said she talked to like friends and family and of course Oprah and asked like, oh, should I do this, should I not? And then Oprah was like, well, you should do it because if they go and everything turns out fine, you'll probably regret that you didn't have that experience. And then she said afterwards, she's glad that she went on the trip and that everything was fine. But what? Why was she so scared though? You know what I mean? Like, and I like again, I get it. You know, especially if you're not somebody that's like into space and it's not like this was something that was probably like a dream of hers like, oh my gosh, I want to go to space. And I mean, it was an opportunity that was presented to her, but it seemed like somebody was dragging her along the whole time. And I'm just like, who is making Gayle get on this space flight? And so, if there was like more, maybe more behind the scenes to the training aspect that we don't know, us, the public, don't know. And for that reason, I can understand why it was just a short trip. Maybe it would have been too much to do a full orbit around Earth, because of, like I said, if not the public, like even if the public was more receptive to it, there were still, and I'm not saying like, I mean, even with all the controversy with the airplanes and the jets and all of that stuff, there's still people flying and making it to their destination safely. And we speak to that and manifest that and continue to pray for that. So, and you shouldn't let those things like cripple you from propelling and wanting to explore the cosmos or take a flight or go wherever, right? So, for that reason, I can understand why they didn't do a full like orbit around Earth or whatever else they could have done. And then again, like I don't, okay, so upon my research, when I was looking at what type of rockets and flights that they have at Blue Origin, from my what I knew from just like surface level knowledge was that they do the whole suborbital thing where the capsule comes off once they reach the edge of the atmosphere and then come back down. But I think they do have another spacecraft that actually orbits Earth. And I mean, I didn't really see a whole lot, like a whole bunch of missions on that, or I think maybe that's more for like scientific reasons. I don't know. But apparently Blue Origin is trying to do both. You know, some like tourism and commercial space travel, as well as, you know, doing contracts with NASA and, sending supplies to astronauts on the moon type of missions. And I think maybe with that perspective, it was probably a good idea just to keep it as a simple trip. And plus, Jeff Bezos' fiance was on the trip too. Now I said her name wrong in my post. My bad. Lauren Sanchez is her name. I called her Laura. My bad. Lauren Sanchez was she was on the space flight too. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know if that's something that she wanted to do. Maybe it was his suggestion. I don't know. But my thing was, if there was any type of inclining that, my wife wasn't going to make it, I'm like, that's a crazy way to that's a crazy way to say you don't like your fiance. That's all I'm saying. But she made it. And she's here with us. And like I said, this is not the first time they've done this. This like they've done this mission before, and this is the least risk taking launch that they could have had. It's not like he was sending her to the moon, like this was the space flight where they went up, came back down. Simple, you know? And at the same time, now that I'm thinking about it, you know, I don't know. Should I go there? Should I go there? I don't know. Part of me is feeling like, okay, there's safety concerns. Part of me was a little underwhelmed, but I wasn't surprised because I knew what the mission was going to be. But then at the same time, like how y'all was hyping it, it was like, oh, it's the all woman, it's the all woman space flight. But at the same time, it's like they really ain't. It's not like they did a whole lot. And again, the optics of it is dope to see, and I think it is important for a young generation of women and girls who are being exposed to science and exposed to the accessibility of traveling in space, and not like, oh, I can't do this because it's because I'm a girl, I can't dream that. have that dream or strive for that goal, you know? And so I think that's important. And so in that way, like I do think it's cool, but at the same time, I'm like, women, we're incredible. And like I said, there were women a part of that flight who, um, I mean, again, I didn't read up on everybody, um, but I did read on, damn her, I'm forgetting her last name. But the other black woman that was there slaying those pictures. I was like, yes, girl, you ate these looks. I mean, everybody did. Everybody looked fabulous. And, me being a fashion girly, I'm here for that. But then at the same time, she does actually have um, experience working with NASA, and she has her own company um, doing. I was trying to read up on the company, and basically, from what I'm understanding is that she does like business consulting with government programs, like the Department of Defense, as well as IT work and cybersecurity. So I'm assuming that's pretty much the scope of her business. But the fact that she has experience working with the government as well as working in NASA, I think that's dope, especially as a black woman, especially as a CEO. So shout out to her. Love that. Um, and and I think to my point, we shouldn't really limit ourselves because, you know, we're women. I felt like, okay, that's cool for media and the story and everything, but I also feel like there could have been a mission of, I don't know. Like I feel like we could have done more. I feel like women are capable of handling the responsibility of more important missions. And I'm not saying that this wasn't important, but I'm just saying I want to see more from us is all I'm saying. Um, like the optics is cool, but I feel like we can do more and we can do everything that the guys are doing. Like it's cool that there's guys out here um, with space companies traveling and working with NASA, working with the government, and also doing commercial flights for tourism. Like that's cool, but I want to see women do that too and be the boss, owning the company. You know, that's kind of that's that was kind of mostly how I was feeling while I was watching it. Like excited for the moment, but I'm like, we could be in we can be in more prominent positions. Yeah. So that's my perspective. That's my opinion. I know it was kind of a little bit all over the place because, like I said, like I have different mixed feelings, which is what I already iterated. Um, you know, partially here for it, but then at the same time, I was skeptical about certain things, and then at the same time, I'm like, okay, I know we could do more. Is basically what I was trying to get at. But then also wanting to explain that so y'all understand um, in detail where I'm coming from. So shout out to the ladies. Um, Love that for us. And also, like I said, I think more importantly, it's cool for a younger generation um, who probably don't understand the whole logistics and the behind the scenes and the business aspect or even the spiritual aspect of it too. I mean, that's important to know. But for young girls that are seeing this or who are fans of Katy Perry's and love her music and are like, "Oh, you could be a pop star, superstar, and go to space too." And that's dope. And I love that for the purpose of it expanding the minds of the next generation. However, me being the Aquarius that I am, that strives for independence and that strives for entrepreneurship and freedom, and also just the experience being a Black woman and just the things that we face and the obstacles and how we're constantly told we got to work twice as hard just to get, a fraction of what, no shade, what these white men be getting. Um, I just want to see us be in higher positions and achieve more. But it's a step towards that. It's a step towards that. And for that, that's what I thumbs up to. So that's my TED talk on the Blue Origin space flight. And, you know, that's all I have to say. Now, if you're not already, follow me on TikTok because I did kind of cover this a little bit on there if I can upload my post. And, I often say, what do I know? I do know quite a bit actually, when it comes to this. And but for the most part, I'm an artist. I'm a girl from Jersey, at least in this lifetime. And, if you want to support my music, I do have songs out right now, Correspondence and Breaking Out the House on SoundCloud. And I also have a merch collection. I don't say the name of the business because I am in the process of like potentially changing the name, but the website is L'air du Verseau, which is the age of Aquarius. I'm an Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius. And I designed collections with the intention of putting out clothing and pieces that pushes the energy of healing, life, elevation, protection in the age of Aquarius in this particular moment in time. And it just so happens to be a full moon. And it just so happens to be 9:36 right now at this particular moment as I'm recording, which happens to be, according to Tesla, Nikola Tesla, that is, because he is his own person. Um, and 9 3 or 369 936 693, whatever, um, is the key to the universe. And it just so happens to be numbers in my birthday. Um, my birthday is January 30th, 1996. And yeah, I feel a connection to those numbers. And you know, with that said, shop the collection, check out the website. I'll put the link in the description if it's not already there. But you can follow me on TikTok, stream the music, support everything. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this live stream. And I hope y'all were informed for those who did not already know. And yeah, let's see how us ladies progress in these spaces.